castle is in unacceptable condition! Unacceptable!
Yep, we're doing Lemongrab. Now, I do want to go through every major Adventure Time character in my Adventure Time analysis and really get to the developments over the course of the show, but Lemongrab, to be honest, is one of my least favorite characters in the entire show. I just never got what their deal was. They keep flip-flopping from the show, making them an irredeemable jerk bordering on villainy, to someone you're apparently supposed to get invested in and want to see succeed. And, well, not to mention their most annoying aspects. And I just really want to know what the writers were trying to do with his character. He feels so one-off, and yet they keep bringing him back and have entire story arcs and developments just around him. I just don't understand. But the series has changed a lot of my perceptions on Adventure Time characters, from how terribly written and inconsistent Princess Bubblegum is, to Trio having a surprisingly compelling journey to become a stronger person, to understanding how great and interesting Flame Princess was as a character. So maybe I can do the same with whiny Lemon Man. Maybe he has a lot more layers to him than he seems if you just peel him away, like a lemon. But we have to go through a lot of... Yeah, it's gonna be painful. So, Lemongrab got introduced in Season 3, after the Season 2 finale had Princess Bubblegum revert to 13 years old, and able to have a relationship with Finn like he's always wanted. The episode starts out with the two just having fun together and messing with PB's new spicy concoction, as Finn wants to reach the next level of their relationship. But soon our Earl of Lemongrab comes in and says his most famous line, "Unacceptable!" Yeah, we're going to get used to this. He's also voiced by Justin Roiland, which is literally all I'm going to say about him in this video. Then he immediately sends everyone to the dungeon, which PB of course objects to. But Lemongrab says she's too young to rule and he has the right to take over as next in line, which even PB is forced to acknowledge. She says she created Lemongrab and was the first to go wrong. I wonder why she was experimenting with lemon instead of candy, but I guess she wanted to test out sour instead of sweet. Though, with the context of the rest of the series, the other candy people are far older than Lemongrab, and if anything, he's one of her youngest creations. And it does lead credence to the idea that PB's true age and history of the Candy Kingdom wasn't developed like it would be later, as Lemongrab at this point would be her only creation. And then of course, Lemongrab starts to abuse his power to hell and back, as Finn and PB try to find a way to get him to leave and plan to prank him out. Leading to this iconic scene, which I don't know how this is going to make him want to leave, but good effort. He gets everyone in the castle and the mess to know who did it. They try to explain it was just a prank, as Lemongrab tries to understand it and tries to laugh at it, which really makes it seem that Lemongrab just doesn't understand things like it and is trying his best to fit in, which is kind of an element that gets focused on later, but he also imprisons everyone for 12 years immediately after. Finn tries his own prank, aka dressing like Ghost and just punching him. That's not a prank, that's his assault. But this is Finn we're talking about. Even though he's in pain and crying, he still encourages them and says it's a good prank. Again, weird. Lemongrab does not seem like a guy would take that lying down. But I guess it's also just him trying to fit in again in its own weird way. But since that doesn't work, they try another plan to use the spicy syrup to get him to run off. Finn and PB also treat it like a fun bonding exercise in that kid enjoyment way. Also made my favorite joke in the episode.
A plate of mashed carrots, flavor.
But they do spice up his food and nearly drive him out of the kingdom before he eventually finds the two and imprisons them for 1,000,000 years. Now with no way out, PB reluctantly says the only way to save her people and get out is to change herself back to 18. But she doesn't want to because she enjoys the carefree, fun nature of being a kid again, but she'll give it up if it means saving her people. But she needs to increase her candy biomass but can't synthetically make more without her lab. But the other candy citizens willingly give up chunks of their own body to help as she's moved by their sacrifice. I actually really love this scene, and it shows the genuine love of PB and her people that the early seasons had. A lot better than later seasons when she just had her god complex and sees them all as pliable underlings she could just clone and replace anytime she wanted. PB needs a love hug from Finn to heat up the biomass so she can re-age. But before she does, she tells him how much fun she had with him, and she wishes you could say like this. And they share a surprise kiss before PB turns back to normal and tells Lemongrab to piss off. Finn still has feelings for her, but PB doesn't acknowledge anything about the relationship 5 minutes ago, eventually leading to its eventual emotional breakdown at the end of the season. Thanks, Princess Bubble, bitch. But yeah, back to Lemongrab. He's a weird case. Everything about him felt like a one-off. He seemed to exist purely to justify Bubblegum becoming older to get back to the status quo before the finale. And yet, it sucks since Finn and PB's relationship was barely developed before then, so the payoff is kinda cheap. Even beyond his purpose in the episode, he didn't have much of a character. He's a sour guy who treats everyone like crap and yells a lot. He's just a massive brat having a temper tantrum at everything. The only thing of interest that it feels like in his naivety, he wants to be long, like trying to find out what a prank is and trying his best to have what he thinks is fun with it. But it's just kind of an assumption, it's not really given much focus. It kinda does in his next appearance in season 4. Lemongrab could have totally been a one-off character and everyone would be fine with it. Nothing about him seemed like any story potential whatsoever. So, You Made Me's existence is kind of a surprise. This one focuses on Lemongrab, where we see he's been breaking in candy people's homes and just watching. Kinda terrifying. PB demands to know his deal, and Lemongrab of course winds his way for an excuse. He says his castle has no citizens and demands she sends her excess citizens for him. PB rightfully points out he doesn't get along well with others, but he says it's because no one understands him and she made him that way. Which, that is a conundrum. Likely Lemongrab was made to be sour, and he fundamentally can't change his nature, but he is still lonely and lost being the only being like him. It probably is a bad existence.
You made me! You're my glove!
Okay dude, I'm kinda defending you, you don't need to go that far. Also, I guess you consider this to be a consequence of our own actions thing for Bubblegum, but really, it's like you could have expected Lemongrab to be this way. PB pleads for his citizens to go with Lemongrab, but they all refuse. All except for 3 rowdy gangsta kids who will for some amnesty and money bags. They go to Castle Lemongrab. Wait, how does he have a castle? I doubt PB built it for him, and there's no way he did it himself. This is what's bothering me, like what happened in between his creation and showing up in too young? But Lemongrab soon gets sick of their attitude and talking back to him. They start screaming and throwing a tantrum, saying they are unfit citizens and need reconditioning. And then he uses his sound sword. Wait, how did he get that too? And then brutally attacks them, throwing them in an electrical chamber where he starts torturing them. Yes, he is torturing children. What the f? And he apparently does so for 3 days. Until PB caught Lemongrab again stalking their citizens, saying they didn't understand him. PB tries to instead get to understand the candy people. She said that they need a ton of love and attention and pride like a pet, which Lemongrab just doesn't understand at all. You know, this is super weird in retrospect that that's her cousin slash son. But yeah, Lemongrab just can't understand it and calls it gross. He also refuses to see anything else but what he feels is right and then runs off. Even Finn has had it with him. But PB really worries about the kids she left in his care, which really should have checked on earlier. We also see PB tries to calm down Finn and Jake, who's all in for going in with violence, since he's her responsibility and wants to help him. Honestly, very mature, especially to bring it to the PB becomes the worst person ever season. And could justify a lot of her inactions on Lemongrab. But they go to their castle and look around, but PB gets a plan and Finn and Jake try to find them. We also see a lot of empty rooms with baseball mitts, which kinda comes important later on. But the duo finds the kids in the chamber as Lemongrab locks them in and ups the volts to torture all of them. PB comes in and begs him to stop and she can help him. But Lemongrab refuses, saying that she can't help because she made him that way and she can't change him, and starts to attack her. But Finn of course can't stand for that and breaks out of the torture chamber to take the blast head on. But PB reveals she cloned Lemongrab, creating a brother for him. Someone who couldn't understand exactly what it's like to be him and give him company, which he's actually cool with. And everyone just forgets the atrocities he did, and it's probably a better person by the end. Yeah, this episode. I really don't get what they want from this.
I don't understand you, Lemongrab.
So they make it clear that Lemongrab by nature is sour. He doesn't like people and he struggles being nice to others in general. And yet he still just wants basic companionship in a way he understands. However, he's so whiny, bratty, and refuses to actually see other perspectives or really try and change at all. Not to mention he goes to assault and torturing children. Like, I'm not over that. And it kinda, sours any sympathy we can really have about him when the episode is about Lemongrab's feelings. In the end, they pretty much can't change him and give him the only person who could be like him. And I hate how there's just barely an acknowledgement about what he did. They make it out like he's some lost soul, but they downright refuses help when it's offered, so preferring to go down a self-destructive path. And I know I slander Bubblegum a lot, it's hard not to, she's the worst running character in the entire show. But honestly, I don't blame her at all for any of this. Yeah, she accidentally made him, but time and time again she tries to help him. When he says he has no one to govern, she tries to send her citizens to him like he wanted. When that doesn't work, she tries to teach him to be kind and care for civilians, which he immediately gives up and run away. And even then, after seeing him torture her friends and civilians, he tries to help them, but he just flat refuses, trying to blame them for his condition. I gotta give credit, she had far too much patience for this man baby, though I guess it does result in her flat out enabling them, as I said, ignoring all he did. But we'll see the results of this soon. Also, I should mention this and the previous episode were covered in the CN crossover series Villainous, in the villain orientation videos, which have the characters cover other villains in CN's multiverse and pointing how terrible they are to teach new villains not to follow their mistakes. In the Adventure Time video, instead of covering the Lich or something, Black Cat himself covers Lemongrab. And of course goes insane by how utterly incompetent and pathetic a villain he is, only slightly perking out when he tortures children. Also, it's hilarious that Black Cat, the most evil entity in CN's multiverse, legitimately considers Princess Bubblegum to be a more evil villain than Lemongrab. Thank you, some acknowledgement! Hell, she has a crime, why didn't she on the Villains Wiki? And wait, why is Rigby here? Oh, that's a lot of crimes. Also, check out Villainous and especially the side media if you can find a translation, since I'd argue it's a lot more compelling and interesting than the main series. I should briefly mention that he appeared in the episode Mystery Dungeon, where he, Ice King, Tree Trunk, Shelby, and Neptune mysteriously wind up in a massive dungeon and introduce each of their skills to escape. Also, I forgot to mention this in the Tree Trunks video, but it does show more of her character development, setting up to Lemongrab when he starts harassing her, and he kinda complies. Lemongrab doesn't do too much, but did give us two of his most iconic scenes.
Acceptable.
And y'all can eat my body if you want to survive.
Wow, I sure this cannibalism aspect doesn't come back in later episodes. But then it's revealed that Ice King kidnapped all of them to use their abilities to get an ancient life-giving mad guy to compare his Fiona and Cake fanfic to life. But for Neptune, he grabbed him thinking he was BMO. Also, he completely forgot Neptune existed despite him fighting for him to be his son in his first appearance. But to be fair, the show itself forgot about Neptune for the longest time. Lemongrab attacks him, but not because he kidnapped him, but...
You serve no function. You must be destroyed.
What? Why did he say that? If he was mad, I'd get it, but it doesn't make sense. What does it matter? It doesn't work, but Neptune reassures him that his characters can live on.
Dreams are real.
Then I will wait for you from across the threshold of consciousness.
Just give it a few years, buddy, it'll happen. So the next important Lemongrab episode is All Your Fault. I gotta love how all of his episodes are tell like he's whining about something. The Lemongrab sent PB a letter that they're out of food and they're starving, and demands she sends more candy. But PB is furious since he left them a lifetime supply. But he sends Finn and Jay to go to Castle Lemongrab with precious candy seeds they can use to grow their own crops to be self-sustaining. We also see Castle Lemongrab is full of new lemon people, which is really weird. Like, how are they there? The whole point of You Made Me was that Lemongrab is alone. How are there more lemon people? Did P make all of them? I kind of doubt that since it's so ununiform and gross. There's kind of an explanation later, but it also doesn't make much sense. And yeah, these are gross and starving and start to hound the two for food for them to make a break for the inside of the castle. There they meet a massive lemon head named Lemon John, who directs them to the Lemongrabs in the dungeon that the two think they got kidnapped. And honestly, Castle Lemongrab is legitimately terrifying. From the random giant organs in the rooms, to the dense eerie shadows and noises, to the disgusting and horrific lemon monsters lurking inside of it. But they find the dungeon chamber with the incredibly emaciated Lemongrabs locked inside, telling them to go away. But they break in and the two continue to be themselves.
No!
The Lemongrabs explained that candy wasn't eaten, but people left the formula for candied life behind in the last episode, and they used this great life themselves from the candy. Which kind of implies that the lemon people were made by them. Which, okay, that would make sense. But it was supposed to be a secret that Lemongrab managed to make his own life. So why doesn't PB notice that Castle Lemongrab suddenly has a huge population to feed? And why doesn't Finn and Jay question it when they arrive? But the euphoria of creating new life was too much for them, as they use all their food to create life and are now left with nothing. But Finn and Jake tell them they have candy seeds that they can grow new food from. And Lemongrab takes it and immediately brings it to life. Even Finn and Jake can't believe how dumb they are. But they'll say they'll take the PB in the Candy Kingdom. And then the Lemongrabs get an idea and rally the lemon people to take over and bring to life the Candy Kingdom, to then make a pillaging army to raid more candy. Okay, where the hell did that come from? Okay, if he was gonna eat it or assimilate it, I get it, but why make an army? That's just weird. And of course, when Finn and Jake object, they just blame them for some reason. Like, there's not even a reason, it's just all their fault somehow. Now they command Lemon John, who's actually a massive lemon colossus who wears the castle, as they walk to destroy the Candy Kingdom. They can't stop him physically, but they realize the organs in the castle must be his and it's his only weakness. So they make their way to the heart chamber and start pounding it. But this causes it to start beating and gives him empathy. He struggles morally with his duty, where to let his people die or the candy people die. And he does the only thing he can do, sacrifice his body and turning it into lemon candy to feed his people. Even Finn acknowledges it was pretty big of him. I guess this is why Castle Lemongrab is in a completely different location after. PB erases the formula from the Lemongrab's memory so they can't do this crap again. Which, again, this means she couldn't have known he had it, so why was she okay with him suddenly having subjects? But Jake asks why she can't just make the Lemongrabs have beating hearts to get empathy like Lemon John, but she says their hearts are fine, it's just their nature. And it ends. Okay, so this is another case of Lemongrab seriously pushing to villainy. He pretty much starves his people because he's so obsessed with making new life, even when it's killing himself and his creations. Even when again he tries to help him, he resorts back to his self-destructive nature and screws himself over, still preferring to blame people than be rational. If that wasn't bad enough, he pretty much tries to decimate the Candy Kingdom, and everything for food or to make more of his family, just as to raise an army. Which is so weird because that's just unlike everything about Lemongrab. Also, come on PB, pretty much destroy the entire Fire Kingdom amongst other atrocities because they might be a threat to your kingdom, but Lemongrab literally went on an assault he nearly succeeded by, and just treated like nothing happened. Come on! And yeah, it does lead again to a reoccurring problem where Bubblegum pretty much enables Lemongrab. I guess like he's her surrogate son and she wants to help him, but virtually all atrocities he's done is practically ignored and she just lets him continue his destructive path and where her own kingdom is threatened. On the other hand, the episode does treat it partially like Lemongrab's naivety, prioritizing instant gratification over a planned procedure to save his kingdom and just wanting a bigger family. But still, the pushes to legit villainy kind of overshadow that. Now, he does have kind of important segment in another 5 more short Grables, where Black and White Lemongrab are playing with a doll they named Lemon Sweet and treat like their son. It's weird because they seem to show genuine love and care for the doll, which is largely unlike the other lemons we see who don't care much for others, which does show the archetype of love and empathy even if it's to a doll. However, they both fight over what they want Lemon Sweet to do, eventually ending with it shattering. And then... Jesus, what the f***? Like, what? Out of nowhere! I don't even know to comprehend that! I mean, granted, it's not like Lemongrab hasn't been cannibalistic before, but never like this! He just went straight to being a feral animal and starts eating his brother alive! And it just ends! I still can't just... What? Okay, we do get to see the results of that in Too Old, where it's after Frost and Fire and had Finn relapse back to blindly serving PB after losing Flame Princess. Ironic since he was the person who caused this initial emotional catastrophe that led to her, but whatever. Even Jake thinks it's a terrible idea. They are invited to go to a dinner in Castle Lemongrab where things seem more efficient and sophisticated, but also messed up. We also see that Black Lemongrab has become huge and obese as White Lemongrab is missing half his body with a chunk of his head bitten off. Ugh. Finn is way too distracted being a slimy simp to notice what's going on, but PB does and is worried. Black Lemongrab is much more volatile and domineering, as White Lemongrab is more meek and compassionate. Also, he's fitted his servants with his shock collars if he thinks they're not good enough. Nice to know he still hasn't gotten over electro torture.
I can't watch this anymore.
Me too, PB. Me too. However, PB finds a lonely lemon boy named Lemon Hope playing a harp in his cell, singing a soliloquy. And this toilet makes me very uncomfortable. PB takes great interest in Lemon Hope, but Black Lemongrab hears the harp music and can't stand it and smashes it and abuses him. But PB can't stand for this and seeing how gifted he is, and is going to take him to the Candy Kingdom so he can get an education, but Lemongrab refuses. Finn proposes to prank Lemongrab to make him change his mind. Yeah, it's clear he's just trying to relive Too Young, hence the episode title. Yeah, the dude is relapsing hard. For God's sakes, writers, give him a stable relationship. One you don't ruin for no reason. PB rightfully says that's dumb, but soon agrees, with a pretty tame one just putting baking soda and vinegar in his food. Kinda wish they just puts him in the gut like before. But Lemongrab is of course insanely unstable and throws him in the dungeon. But PB reveals that she planned for it all along so she could smuggle Finn's flute in the cell so that Lemongrab would smash it and they can escape. Though, she gives it to Lemon Hope? I don't know why she would think he knew how to play a completely different instrument. But the Lemongrabs love the terrible music and dance as White Lemongrab accidentally releases them. Black Lemongrab is furious and calls his brother soft and then eats him whole! Yes! My god, what is wrong with this? Even Finn wants to get the hell out of there seeing this. But before they can escape, the exit is boarding up. Finn has absolutely no observational awareness whatsoever and doesn't understand the severity of the situation, refuses to call Jake since he considers this whole thing a date, and thinking they can just prank their way out.
Your other plan failed, which was part of my plan, which worked.
No, it didn't turn out the way you wanted. You just accidentally found a way out. Don't take credit for dumb luck.
I thought we were having fun together.
Finn, I have citizens who need me.
But yeah, I'd hate to agree with PB here, but come on, dude. But Lemongrab is furious at them taking Lemon Hope and seems to want to kill them and send his citizens after him. But White Lemongrab forces himself out of Black Lemongrab's mouth, disables the collars, and sending a better way of life and tell Lemon Hope to leave, grow strong, and save them all. And okay, this is making me ungodly uncomfortable. And the other lemons help him to escape, declaring Lemon Hope their hope. But at least the episode ends with Finn realizing his mistakes and wanting to patch things with Flame Princess, which would lead to Earth and Water in the next episode. Granted, he really doesn't. But this episode is the start of the Lemon Hope arc, which we'll come to next. And yeah, Lemongrab has just gone completely off the rails. Lemon Sweet must have been the thing that kept them together because after it, he pretty much became a complete psychopath, not only eating his brother alive twice, but abusing and torturing his subjects and imprisoning Lemon Hope because he doesn't like his music. And seemingly going to imprison and maybe kill Finn and PB. Even before, we get to see how unhinged Lemongrab is while he still keeps his sophisticated facade. But unlike before, there's no hints of naivety or longing to justify it. He's just gone off the deep end. However, arguably, that's not centered on White Lemongrab. Now disfigured and constantly abused by his older brother, has seemed to grow as a person due to the way he's been treated, now seeing how it feels to be abused by someone like himself, showing shreds of compassion unlike what his nature makes you think, and saving Lemon Hope to take down his tyrannical brother. It's surprisingly strong character growth that separates the Lemongrabs from clones to a good and bad persona. But what happens to Lemon Hope? We see her near the season 5 finale, Lemon Hope. We start out with a symbolic look inside Lemon Hope's dreams, with him free and flying in the air, which we'll later see embodies his freedom from Lemongrab, for he's waking up to go to school in the Candy Kingdom. And then is shown a propaganda tape from Lemongrab, who now looks suspiciously like Kim Jong-un, and fittingly enough, he's turned the entire kingdom into North Korea. Citizens suffering and enslaved and can no longer escape, with Lemongrab eating anyone who tries.
I'm going to eat you! No!
He apparently is punishing all of them for letting Lemon Hope escape. Also, his brother is still alive in his stomach. Yeah, I'm just so uncomfortable with this. White Lemongrab pleads for Lemon Hope to save them. PB hopes it would get Lemon Hope to become responsible and free his fellow lemons, but Lemon Hope lacks even empathy for others. Also, this implies that PB is also educating Finn at the same time. I mean, it's nice for her to do, but it seems that she gives up after this. She also takes them to the Lemon Earldom, which, wow, they must have clear-cut everything around them. But she also says that she has pacts and treaties that stop her from getting directly involved. Okay, how did that happen? I kinda doubt Lemongrab is a diplomatic, non-negotiable type. Did he just scream at her until she signed the documents? PB urges Lemon Hope to realize that the other lemons gave him his freedom and are being punished, and he's obligated to free them. But he refuses, loving his new freedom and that he doesn't have to do anything. Now, it's very easy to hate Lemon Hope for being a selfish brat refusing to rescue the people who saved him, but at the same time, well, he is a kid, and like what's been shown through this series, lemons are sour and selfish. It's going to be hard to teach anyone like that the importance of empathy and helping others. And as he said, they gave him his freedom, and with freedom, he doesn't have to do anything. He's only bound by honor, which is something he likely can't even understand. It's also implied that he has some PTSD with what he experienced, and he runs off with PB visibly saddened. But Lemon Hope is loving his freedom, dancing and singing naked, proclaiming his freedom without a care in the world. And then he randomly comes across a sand pirate raid? Note that everyone's dead as he sneaks aboard the boat. And apparently, all the crew get killed by a greed lord and maroons the ship in the desert. And in the meantime, we see another trippy dream. I'm trying my best to interpret it, but it's like Lemon Hope represents the vehicle for changing the kingdom that White Lemongrab directed to in his last words to him, but as a horse that's taking its own reins, dragging the rider along, telling him to stop as he ignores them. And Bubblegum is trying to physically stop him, with their words sticking to Lemon Hope's subconscious until it consumes him. But waking up, we see the true consequences of freedom without responsibility, with Lemon Hope emaciated and alone for likely weeks, out of food and water, and plagued with nightmares. But he still loves his freedom and tries to rationalize it to find resources to survive dealing with the consequences of his own naivety and ignorance as he's eventually dying. And that's where the episode ends. We're to the Lemon Hope arc, but fitting enough. Just kidding, we get part 2 soon after. Lemon Hope is found and assumed revived by a somewhat familiar looking pink man named Flannel Boxing Day, who offers to help as he agrees taking them on their flying craft. They come across a greed lore, which Flannel gets Lemon to play its instruments to lure into rocks where it dies. But Lemon sees the lemon people it had and demands he stop the ship to save them. But he sees it's just the gold that the greed lord ate. I mean, that's why he attacked the pirates. Flannel says they can keep it and it's pretty much his job. He offers to recruit Lemon Hope as an apprentice and he agrees. And we see another trippy dream, likely representing that despite his facade of freedom, Lemon Hope is still bound by obligation he does acknowledge. And Lemongrab still has a tight grip on him as he feasts on his friends and family like cows to the slaughter. Flannel sees Lemon Hope bothered and he explains his nightmares. He has freedom at last, but all he can think about is the lemon people. And Flannel explains that despite his physical freedom, he's still bound by the obligation to save his people. The guilt is his new chain he can't escape from. Lemon Hope decides to go back and fulfill his obligation, and Flannel agrees to take them there, but says he can't interfere with Lemongrab politics. Now, it's very much implied that Flannel is actually Princess Bubblegum, not only for the similar appearance, but also a lot of their dialogue suggests it, with him knowing Lemon Hope's name before meeting him, using familiar scientific terminology, and having similar trees that prevent him from getting close to the castle. But I like how they never confirm it, so it's really up in the air if it's really them, though it pretty likely is. But Lemon Hope makes his way out the castle, despite his fear, but once atop the walls, he's confronted by Lemongrab himself. He's got earplugs that make him immune to Lemon Hope's harp, though he can't hear anything. White Lemongrab pleads Lemon Hope to play the harp, and they reach out and take the earplugs out. The other citizens revolt and bind Lemongrab as Lemon Hope plays as he screams in agony and then freaking explodes. Yeah, explodes. Guts fly and everything. It's disgusting. But we also see PBS sew Lemongrab back together from the chunks. You know, Princess, you don't have to do that. I mean, he's no longer your responsibility, and you're not obligated to bring him back. He's kind of proved multiple times how he really doesn't deserve to be a ruler. It would really be for the best. But she offers to let Lemon Hope rule until Lemongrab recovers since he's their champion. However, Lemon Hope declines, saying he'll come back once he's tired of being free in 1,000 years. He even admits he mostly came back to not feel guilty with his full freedom. PB also made an honestly really good song as we flash forward to 1,000 years in the future to the depressing future of Ooh. As he is finally done exploring for millennia, he goes back to the room the princess made for him and finally rests.
Once you were lost, and now you're back home.
Wow, what an arc. I'd honestly consider one of Adventure Time's most interesting story arcs, especially around the ideas of freedom and Lemon Hope's character arc. It's also got plenty of room for interpretation. However, in the perspective of Lemongrab, there's not really too much development. He has completely spiraled down to an absolutely irredeemable monster, though not too far from his last appearance. It's pretty much the worst Lemongrab has ever acted, seeing how he treats his entire kingdom and his other atrocities. And yeah, it gets to a point where he's practically irredeemable. But at the same time, White Lemongrab has been trying his best to stop him, even being the only one who could have let Black Lemongrab be vulnerable to the harp. But the main focus is on Lemon Hope, who did have a very interesting journey. It's interesting that despite Lemon being the objectively most selfless lemon, aside from Lemon John, he is still inherently selfish and self-serving, saying he mostly did what he did to be free of guilt. But still, he did earn his freedom with his actions. It was compelling that he pretty much had to teach himself how to be a better person, despite the urging of Princess Bubblegum. And yeah, I slander Princess Bubblegum a lot in these videos, but I gotta say, this arc was her at her best. She is very active and helpful and tries her best to help Lemonhelp to fulfill his duty to save his people, trying her best to educate him like she promised before, and teaching him of empathy, trying to inspire him to take action and mindful of his own feelings on the matter. But she realizes she can't just tell Lemonhelp how he's supposed to act. And with the likely implication that she's flannel, allows him to come to that conclusion himself and being incredibly patient with him, like a true inspiring figure until he can muster the strength to fulfill his obligation. And though again I'm iffy on her just rebuilding Lemongrab and barely acknowledging his atrocities, she does try and get Lemon to lead his people since he proved to be their champion. It's kind of amazing honestly, cause she's actually acting like the kind, intelligent, and charitable ruler that everyone treats her as despite her constant atrocities. And this is season 5 Bubblegum, late season 5. AKA insult leaders to their face and get her friends thrown in prison Bubblegum, ruin a wedding and throwing innocent people in prison Bubblegum, commits genocide without a second thought Bubblegum. Honestly, she's not that different from Lemongrab in this arc, the main difference being she doesn't eat her own people.
Be okay. Please be okay. Please be okay.
Okay, I guess I'm wrong there. Well, I gotta give this a Lemongrab. At least he keeps his war crimes to his own kingdom. No, I will never let the cooler go. But okay, now an interesting change happened. Lemongrab got rebuffed from both his two sides, becoming arguably a new being. I'll call him Grey Lemongrab. And I wonder if I should consider him separate from his others. Does Black Lemongrab's crimes apply to Grey Lemongrab? It's hard to really say, but it's interesting how it combines both Lemongrab's personalities, mellowing out Black Lemongrab's psychotic tendencies with White Lemongrab's selflessness, creating what appears to be a much calmer and less aggressive Lemongrab. But he only has one starring episode left, the season 6 episode, The Mountain. And I gotta say, this may be one of the most cryptic and symbolic episodes of the series aside from Hall of Egress. I still can't really get what it's talking about. But it starts out showing Castle Lemongrab, but everything seems a lot better. The infrastructure seems practically perfected. Everyone gets food and crops are being well sustained. And there doesn't seem to be hints of oppression or injustice. It seems practically perfect. Though something's up with Lemongrab, as he looks up to a mural that is kinda confusing, but then it cracks and he's visibly distraught. Again, I have a hard time thinking about what it means. The mural though does kind of foreshadow the events in the episode if you notice. Lemongrab leaves, likely following the mural, where Finn and Jake spot him heading to the Mountain of Matthew. Finn wants to follow them, saying he's concerned if Lemongrab is gonna mess with some mystical stuff, but also get his mind off of seeing Flame Princess again. But a guardian only allows Finn to enter, saying only he has the emotional turmoil for the mountain. And wow, those backgrounds are gorgeous. Lemongrab sees 3 mirrors as Matthew says he can only pick the right one to see him. In one he sees Princess Bubblegum offering to play catch with him, wanting to relate to him, which Lemongrab desires as well. That's actually kind of interesting, especially with the numerous catchers myths in You Made Me. It implies that Lemongrab seeks far more familiar connection and bond with Bubblegum that's never really focused upon. That's actually a huge missed opportunity considering how much of the relationship is unexplored. Next we see Lemonhelp taking control of the kingdom, proclaiming he will undo the order set by Lemongrab to his anger. And the last one was from another 5-star Greybles of the 2 Lemongrabs playing with Lemon Sweet. It's been theorized that each of these doors represent a person's desires, their fears, and their pasts, which we'll later see supported with Finn's choices. However, Lemongrab reluctantly chooses the past, and things get really trippy. I mean really trippy. We also see Finn's mirror path, his desire to be with Flame Princess again, his fear of his friends eating his favorite snacks, and his past as one of his previous incarnations. Finn also chooses the past, which is apparently the correct way to go. Finn reaches Lemongrab in the chamber of Matthew. It looks like a giant diaper for some reason. Apparently Matthew was a sort of hive being that numerous people over the ages have come to shred their mortal bodies to become a part of, proclaiming he will assimilate those who come to him until the end of the world, where he'll emerge in his final form to restore the world. Lemongrab says they have multiple options: to join Matthew to shred his mortal body and experience his ego death, whatever that means. But he has another option: to destroy Matthew with his lemon candy. Then he says,
If you are the head that floats atop the ziggurat, then the stairs that lead to you must be infinite. Infinite stairs are unacceptable!
Okay, I have no idea what he's talking about. It's one of those times where I legitimately don't know if Adventure Time is being absolutely stupid or brilliant. This seemingly destroys Matthew and restores all his followers' forms to their dismay as they attack Lemongrab, but Finn gets him to safety. Lemongrab returns to his castle, looking at the mural again, and spits some lemon candy in the crack. And that's it. Okay, what? Yeah, this one's kind of hard to talk about. Not a lot is explained. You don't really get to see much of Grey Lemongrab, but he's gotten over his megalomania in Lemonhope, and made a practically perfect, sustained society he could call his own. And I wonder if he's dissatisfied with that. Is he bored? Is he accepting of it? I still have no idea why he went to Matthew, nor the importance of the crack. Please tell me what you think. Though I wonder how much of the previous Lemongrabs make up Grey Lemongrab, as he's much more mellow and less prone to yelling or being a brat. But yet he does show his longing to relate to Bubblegum, his inherent rage against Lemonhope, which is weird considering how much the two Lemongrabs before hated and helped him. However, I seriously wonder why Lemongrab went and destroyed Matthew, or what that quote means. By infinite stairs, does he mean that Matthew is providing a form of immortality in his godhood that Lemongrab objects to? Is he resentful for being a false god promising steps to followers they can never achieve and seeks to destroy for good? Does he see it like a reflection of his past tyranny and can't stand for it? I seriously don't understand.
Careful with those metaphors, bro!
I do appreciate that Adventure Time can have these very vague and philosophical points to it that's open to a lot of interpretation. It really proves how good the show's writing can be. But honestly, that's it for Lemongrab. He doesn't show up much in the rest of the series. He's an element assimilated to the candy element and becomes Pink Lemongrab, now serving his
Essence
to others. He's in the finale on the side of Princess Bubblegum. Honestly, I can buy that more than Flame Princess. He does have a pretty funny moment.
Yes?
Also, he and LSP share a kiss? And why not? Oh wait, they dated, that was weird. And that's about it. He doesn't even really show up in Fiona and Cake aside from a small cameo, and even his parallel versions aren't important. There's the random Minecraft special where he tries to grow a lemon tree, and failed. So I guess that's it. I kinda wish his character got more conclusion, but then again, did he really need one? Lemongrab's been quite a character bag to go through, and honestly, I don't know if I understand him even less now. It seems this was the consensus even with the writers. Lemongrab really isn't a character you can put easily in a category. He's abrasive, mean, selfish, horrible, and does things that are downright villainous. But it's hard to consider them evil, at least in the Adventure Time sense. Most of his actions are framed as if he's a bratty kid, throwing tantrum when he's called out and doesn't get what he wants. It doesn't bother much to see other perspectives. But it's framed like he doesn't know any better. As I said, it's easy to write him off as being evil or a jerk. And I do really wish the show pointed out a lot of his atrocities more, and not a Bubblegum enable him at every chance. But as much as he said, he was made that way. He's a sour lemon. That's just how lemons are.
a lemon gives by taking and cares by yelling.
The feeling of caring unknown to lemons?
Even Lemonhope, the most selfless lemon we've seen, is inherently selfish. Is it really fair to judge Lemongrab based on normal human standards of morality when he's not one? But at the same time, we've seen he's not incapable of it. A lot of his appearances imply a sense of want of belonging, wanting to be loved, and even showing compassion and genuine love a few times as well. So it's not like he's completely above that. I think Lemongrab might have a lot of potential if the show really focused on the things like his desire for affection, countered by his nature. It could be interesting. In fact, I'd argue Lemongrab is a more effective morally gray character than PB is. PB is not a morally gray character, she's a badly written one. They want to make her complex, but they don't follow through. I've gone over this multiple times, but she continuously does atrocities, character-breaking atrocities, but no one ever acknowledges it, nor calls her out on it, and the show treats it like it's perfectly fine. You can still root for her regardless, she's apparently the perfect princess. They can't commit at all. Lemongrab from the start is always treated like a jerk you don't want to run any kingdom. He's selfish, apathetic, whiny, mean, everything. He will prioritize his base desires and wants the same way a kid would. But it's a part of his nature. He doesn't know any better and likely can't know any better. He does what he thinks is right because it makes sense to him. Lemons are just sour and mean, and he runs his kingdom to his best ability in that regard. We can call him out on it, but is that really fair?
not squeeze Lemon to survive?
Also, most of all, the show actually treats him like that. The time he does go to downright villainy is in Lemon Hope. You can talk that down to his unjust retribution for his civilians betraying him. And even then, Grey Lemongrab has calmed down and has made his kingdom a better place. And you're never supposed to like him in any of his appearances, just maybe understand him. It's hard to understand him, but maybe that's a good thing. It's not that there's an Adventure Time character who just can't be put in one box. It does make discussion on how aligned he is. And even though I still don't quite get what his deal is, I guess maybe that's acceptable. So Lemongrab, what do you think about my character analysis of you?
Unacceptable!
Well, screw you, I still don't like you. I'm out of here.
These three have named their new alliance. Every villain is Lemons, otherwise known as evil.